Happy Friday, everybody. My name's Indy, and the gentleman next to me is Mr. Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting. And welcome to another exciting, amazing, awesome episode of Indie Game Business. Thank you so much, Tripwire Presents, for presenting us with a sponsorship where we can keep this thing rolling at the level that it is. And today we've got Wahid Lodin from Looper PR, and the topic of the day is how successful PR and marketing can land you an investment or publishing deal. I wonder if anyone's interested in hearing about that.
No. Why would that matter? Oh, I need to unmute the Discord.
You don't need that.
All right. So, Wahid, you know how we always start these things, man. So tell us how you originally got into the industry, and then walk us through your career up to founding your new firm.
Yeah, definitely, Jay. First of all, thanks for having me. Been watching the show for quite a bit. We worked together in the past, and I think it's the first time we're face to face on this podcast.
Also, don't forget to unmute in Discord, please. There we go.
Okay.
So for everyone on Discord, Wahid said a bunch of stuff that was super important. You don't need to know what it was.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying thanks to Jay and the team for having me on. We've known each other for a while, so happy to finally be here. I used to be a radio journalist. I graduated college with a journalism degree. Spent a few years there, got an internship at a gaming agency. Found out I really liked it, and I did particularly well at it. The rest was history. I kind of continued my trajectory onwards, worked at a few PR agencies, went in-house to a few tech startups, actually. And I think that was pretty beneficial. I had worked at quite a few startups over in New York, got some consulting gigs as well. And then, been exposed to all types of marketing. So I was able to really compartmentalize everything. And then when COVID happened, I essentially had taken everything that I learned and what the most important aspects I found in PR, traditional marketing, digital marketing, put it together and, basically created Looper. And, we went from a single person consultancy, which was just me, to over the last year growing to a team of, we're 5 now and about to be 6. So everything has been working, pretty well so far.
Well, that's awesome. And congratulations. And that's how the Powell Group started 12 years ago. I just named it the group so people would think there were more people than just me. And so
Marketing 101. There you go.
Exactly. Pretend that, you're way busier than you actually are. So this is an interesting conversation today because we've had a lot of talks about PR and marketing, always popular talks, but it's generally on the consumer side. But today we're going to focus more on how a good PR marketing strategy can help you land a publisher or an investor for the game. So more, I would say, the B2B side of marketing. So starting from the top, why is this important for you to be marketing your game if you're still looking for an investor or a publisher?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone here is familiar with how tough the indie landscape can be. I mean, it's just so hard to stand out in a sea of thousands of games. Thousands of games hit Steam each month, and you really just have to be able to stand out. So a lot of people find unique ways to do that. I think that for the purposes of finding an investor or a publisher, it's incredibly important because they're the ones that are able to essentially help your game, your development studio scale. And it's not always the case, don't get me wrong. I just think that finding a publisher and investor is just incredibly important for some people. Lots and lots of indies are looking for the right partner to work with. And, in order to be able to do that, you need to get on the radar. So that's where marketing comes in. You need to be able to build your brand awareness, work on your profile and your social media presence. And then you get put on the map, right? So marketing then becomes kind of a two-way street. Traditionally, indie studios or any studios really that are looking for a publisher are the ones to pitch themselves. But if you do a good enough job at marketing yourself and you get the right kind of audience, you eventually see eyeballs coming in from the publishers and investors. They'll find you, which is kind of the opposite of how it traditionally has worked. So With that said, you do a good enough job at marketing yourself, and the publishers and investors come to you.
I had to unmute there, which makes you stand out a little more because it is, like you said, it's completely competitive. All right. And so we've already got a question coming in, and it goes straight into what we're going to talk about next anyway. So Matthew on YouTube says, I've got experience with Facebook. Is that enough social media presence?
Yeah. So, Matthew, I'll say that Facebook is a great tool to reaching some audiences, but it's really not where the core of your audience lies. Twitter has become a really a foundational block to the game dev community. I would say that you should, log in your journey across all social media platforms, but start with Twitter. You're on Facebook, which is great. You want to be as engaged in the discussion as possible, and a majority of game developers today use Twitter as that path. In addition to that, don't leave out LinkedIn. Make sure you're growing your Discord community as well. It's kind of a tough thing for an indie developer to be able to develop their game, work on the business aspect of things and the marketing, which is why a lot of the times marketing agencies are hired, because it's a bandwidth thing. But keep in mind, you have to diversify your social presence. I don't think that just relying on Facebook by itself is that great of a strategy. It is great that you started, but look at expanding your social media presence elsewhere.
So what about TikTok, which has always been the hot one lately? I mean, we know it's a good way to reach consumers. How does TikTok factor into the business side?
Yeah, TikTok. I honestly, I love TikTok. It's a fantastic platform to get eyeballs. They have a great algorithm that works in the poster's favor. I myself have a TikTok where I mess around and post some things, and I've gone viral a few times, and it's led to a lot of traffic to my personal profile, to my Instagram, to my website. I think TikTok is phenomenal. So in regards to how it helps you, I mean, if you look at the traditional marketing funnel, right, from the top to bottom approach, you have to first get your product seen. I think TikTok is a great place to get that first step going. So be able to showcase your game, work on the development, show the journey of what you're working on a day-to-day basis, how you're building out your product, and what new features are being implemented, through each deployment. Every time you're working on making a new character in the game, working on a new item or a new feature, explain how it's done. Even just reposting a video that you have on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I think is phenomenal. But then make sure that your product is traceable, your company is viewable from your TikTok. So be able to slap your website on there and make sure that the funnel is working. Get them over to your website, get them over to your other social media channels. I would say that out of all the social media platforms, TikTok is the most favorable in terms of the algorithm helping out the poster. And we've seen a lot of success with our clients doing that. But just make sure that the rest of the funnel is going forth, and be able to get them to your webpage, get them to your other socials. And then, eventually when the users come flocking in and your wish lists go up, your social presence goes up, you're seeing an increase in followers and engagement. I mean, investors look at that kind of stuff. Publishers really love to see that. And we've seen time and time again that, a lot of publishers are looking at your social media presence and your engagement. They're looking to see how active your community is and how you were able to build it from the ground up. Because anyone can really pay for, social media campaign and buff up their numbers with some kind of, BS money being thrown behind it. But building it organically is a whole different beast. And being able to do that, I think TikTok is a crucial first step.
So another question coming in from YouTube. See, y'all are already making my life super easy this morning. So from Captured Rapture, what are some of the most important KPIs that investors or publishers use in their selection process? Are they different depending on the platform, as in PC versus console versus mobile?
Yeah, definitely. So from the publisher or investor side, I would say that there are some key metrics that they traditionally look at. Your wish list, your engagements, what your conversion rates are in regards to your paid campaigns. How expensive is it to acquire a new user? All of these are the traditional things they look at. But also keep in mind the marketing metrics that you're presenting and how you can leverage that to your benefit. Example, like how active is your social media? What does the average engagement look like? If you're seeing, 50 to 60 likes and retweets per post on your development journey, and you're showcasing that, you're participating in like Wishlist Wednesday and Trailer Tuesdays, Screenshot Saturdays, and you're seeing engagement across the board. You're building your Discord, your wish lists are going up. These are all phenomenal numbers and ways to convey that your product and your game are valuable for an investor. There's kind of two sets of KPIs you're looking at. One is what the publisher and investor traditionally look at, and two is the marketing KPI that you're able to present to them that kind of shows the value of your product. So, with that said, I would say that we covered the publisher and investor KPIs that they're usually looking for. But, in regards to the marketing KPIs that you can present, talk about your Discord numbers. What does your Discord engagement look like? How has the growth looked like over the past 6 to 12 months? Did you go from 0 users to 100? Did you go from 100 to 1,000? That's phenomenal. You need to share those. Because scaling, I would say, gets easier as your Discord gets bigger. Your referral process becomes more robust. More and more people are being active and engaged. And then that takes to other platforms. So, getting them to your Discord and getting them to your Twitter are incredibly important because eventually they'll find their way to your Steam page. They'll be following you. They'll be wishlisting your games, checking out your demos. When they download a demo, if you have 1,000 demo downloads of your product, that's important to share with an investor. That means that there's an audience for what you have. And then also using, testers to your advantage. What are the testers saying? These are all things that can be very marketable, and you can pivot it to show them how active you're being, on the development front as well as the marketing front. I think that, an investor's job is to run the ins and outs of your product and make sure that everything's looking good for them. But half the job is for you to present it in a way to reassure them that that's the case.
So, and of course, the next question that we were all expecting to come in, has arrived. So, how many followers is a good number for an indie game to have before launch? But I'll also add on to that, how does especially when we're talking about wish list, how does the age of the wish list affect whether it's actually viable or a good one?
It's a good question. I hate to be that guy. I don't think that there's a good minimum number. I think that the quality of the number is far more important. So, for example, let's say that your Twitter page has, like 1,000 followers, but your engagement, you're seeing 50 to 60 likes. That's a pretty good number. That's like a 5 to 6% engagement rate, which is traditionally higher than companies that have far more followers than that. But having, 100,000 followers and like 10 to 20 likes and retweets, that's a pretty abysmal engagement rate. And I've seen it time and time again. I know how the algorithm is done. I know that they're boosting their numbers to make it look good for investors. But at the end of the day, impressions are impressions. They're not actual engagement. So making sure you build quality followers is important. And then in regards to wish lists, wish lists, I think statistically speaking, and I'm not sure if this is the actual number, I may have read it somewhere, that 1 to 2% of wish lists convert for a Steam product when they launches. That is the case in a lot of ways, yes. But if you have a quality followership, I think that number can be even higher. We've seen clients in the past that we've helped them with community marketing, and they have built up their numbers in such a quality way that they've launched with 2,000 wish lists, but 10% of that converted. They had 200 sales within the first week of launch, which was phenomenal. I mean, you're beating Steam average benchmarks, what others are seeing in the industry, because you were able to keep them active and engaged, build quality followings. And I think that's the most important aspect of things. So I wouldn't focus too much on the volume. Don't look at the number and say, I need 10,000 wish lists. Look at your overall assessment, how many you have in your Discord, how many people you have on Twitter, how many people are engaged in all of your social media posts in your Discords. Make sure you're treating your your beta testers and your demoers, very well with rewards and stuff like that. And they're the ones that are going to convert, because new users typically don't convert on first touch with your game. You have to be able to build a community and earn their trust for them to follow the game and then convert when the game launches. And another thing about wishlist is, the age of the wishlist. I think if you're doing a very good job at remaining active and informed, sharing Steam updates, sharing Discord updates, keeping everyone posted on how close the game is to launching, what new features are launching. It doesn't really matter how old the wish lists are. I know statistically, the older a wish list is, the harder it is to convert. So if something from like 2 years ago when you announced the game to 2 years later, the likelihood of that is much lower. But I think if you've done a fantastic job of maintaining communication and transparency, being able to incorporate, those wish listers with you along the way of your product, you're going to see better results than most. And I think that's the most important aspect to consider.
So when the investors are going, or investors and publishers in particular versus consumers are going and looking for games, it's like I just came out of a green light meeting with one of our publisher scouting clients minutes ago. Where do you see this particular segment going to find games? Where should developers be focusing their marketing effort to specifically be seen by publishers and investors?
Yeah, definitely. So, there's kind of a few different areas I recommend. So first and foremost, be active on social media. I think that's always the answer. Being active on Twitter and making sure that you're being engaged with your community is a fantastic way to get a publisher noticed, because they're the ones following the discussions, and everyone's on social media. And if you're not a proper investor or publisher if you're not consistently browsing for new products and things to invest in, if you're not looking on Twitter or Facebook for new products. But with that said, I think that there's some additional ways to help. One being PR. So getting your game seen by media is incredibly important. A lot of the times people come and they're like, okay, I want to get into IGN, I want to get in Game Informer, and it'll boost my wish list, it'll boost my sales. It is the case sometimes. It's not the case every single time. So I want to make that clear. PR at the end of the day is a brand awareness tool. It's a way for your brand to build its profile, to get seen by others. It's not a direct customer acquisition campaign. So if you're looking to get into PR, get into IGN, expect 1,000 sales overnight, it doesn't work that way. But what you want to do is be able to leverage PR, that when someone Googles your company, the first thing that comes up is an article showcasing your demo, to talk about your company, to talk about the journey that you took to building your game. That's all phenomenal ways to get noticed, because investors are always reading, different sites, and publishers are looking into these sites like IGN and Game Informer to look for studios to invest in and games that look particularly interesting. And typically the ones that are on those websites are the ones that are getting noticed by the gamers too. So it makes sense for them to want to inquire and learn more. If both a publisher and a regular gamer or everyday gamer is reading an IGN article about this new game that's coming out next year, I'm pretty sure they're both going to inquire about it. It's just the way that the funnel works. And then, that's the PR aspect of things, getting into media sites, getting your game on the radar of journalists, and getting articles written about you, your game previewed and reviewed. And then there's influencer marketing with it, which I think is equally just as important. So having Twitch streamers and content creators play your game, be able to showcase how great it is, it's a phenomenal way to just get on the radar, because they share it on multiple channels. Eventually someone's going to see it, the right person's going to see it and want to learn more about it, whether it be a consumer or an investor, because they're all looking at the same channels. But with that said, again, a brand building technique. It's something that makes your product stand out. People will know it's important because it got on the radar of influencers who wanted to check it out. And again, it's a crucial brand building tool. I think that it's very much a necessity to be able to stand out that way.
So, I mean, how much danger do you run when you do this PR campaign before you have a publisher how much of a risk is it when the publishers turn around and go, "Oh, wait, you've already announced the game. We don't want to touch it."
Yeah, that's definitely a good point to have. And I've seen a few different case studies where that kind of goes against the grain of what you're saying, Jay. So it's not always the case. I mean, uh, an investor or publisher will be equally as interested in a product if it's a quality product, if people are writing about it, because the at the end of the day, the revenue that they get comes from the deal that they land with you when the game launches and starts to sell. So I mean, keep in mind that they may want to do the announcement around it to showcase it and to do that first reveal or whatever, but the numbers come from the sales, and they want to be able to strike that deal before launch. But I have seen time and time again that a lot of our clients, ones that work with Looper right now, or those that I've worked with in the past as a consultant, they have struck many investment and many publishing deals after announcing the game. It's a very good question. I think that it was something that was thought about a few years back, but investors now and publishers now, they just care about where the money is, and the money comes from sales. So if you're doing a good job marketing the game, you announce it, everyone's covering it, and it looks to be a phenomenal opportunity for them, and they're going to want to invest regardless of the situation.
All right. So next up, Matthew from YouTube. How early in development should I start promoting a game? My game died and I'm restarting development on Unity.
Yeah, Matthew, that's a good question. I think that there's never a wrong time to start promoting the game. I have seen developers that start to promote their game on social media as soon as they start developing it. They showcase, how the characters are being built. They show, how they're developing the items. What you're using Unity. They're showing how they're developing on Unity, and character creation, all that stuff. Videos that are being published on their Twitter channels, just kind of letting everyone know how everything's kind of coming into fruition. You start to get a community of developers around you that are able to also share your project and your journey. And then once the game starts to become more polished, that's when the consumers come flocking in. I think that, and don't discount the game dev community. Other developers support developers. So you want to rely on them heavily to, be able to get their feedback, but also network for you and be able to promote for you as well. And everyone's just very supportive in the game dev community. So, I would say that the best time to start is now. You want to start promoting your game today, whether you want to promote it on social media, whether you have a first build or a demo that you want to showcase to media and influencers. Just make sure that the product is ready and make sure that you feel comfortable once you start to showcase the game to journalists and influencers, and feel comfortable about where you are with the product. Even if it's a beta or an alpha, you can always disclose that. But as long as the product is not crap, I mean, everyone knows that a game dev has a very hard job and they're doing their best to create a product that they love. Everyone's pretty supportive of it. So to answer your question, I think the best time to start is now.
So from Links the Creator on YouTube, do your previous game sales affect publisher interest?
It's a good question. I think it varies publisher by publisher, and and the reason for this is that a lot of publishers care about the product now and where you are, because they're going to want to be able to market it how they can, which is a completely different story from how your sales did on the previous project. And not everyone's first project is always that successful, but we've seen time and time again that the second or third projects are far more refined. They're more experienced, so the product is better overall. You're expecting the game to do better in terms of marketability and sales. But yes, I mean, at times it does matter to some publishers. I wouldn't discourage you for trying to push that forward anyways, because I mean the reality is that a first game success, it does say something about the scale of success that you were able to achieve the first time around. It says you did a good job about it, and publishers like to see that. But I mean, again, a majority of the time, the first time that you're launching a project as a game dev, you're focused on the development. The marketing and the sales aspect of stuff comes secondhand. So you're trying to build a product and gain that experience that you can use as a developer moving forward. So, I mean, it's kind of a yes and no answer, but I would say it varies by publisher. But you should always be striving to, move that forward and work on your next project and secure a publishing deal.
And the thing to keep in mind too is you don't want to ignore it when you're doing your pitch decks and things like that. I mean, address it. If you didn't have a lot of sales, and I see this a lot when we're scouting games, and we have a client that's like, I don't know, the first game didn't sell well, and I'm like, well, no shit. They self-published it and they're a developer. They don't understand all the nuances. They don't have the experience in marketing. So don't ignore it, because yeah, it will come up, but just explain it. It's like, look, either we had a bad launch experience, or we didn't do marketing or whatever, but just don't try to hide it, because they're going to find out either way. So what are some of the most common mistakes that you see when it comes to developers trying to get the word out to publishers and investors through PR and marketing?
Yeah, I think there's really two common mistakes that I see over and over. The first one is not being present online. I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, like games are on the internet, but the social media presence, the development, website and stuff like that. Like, I've had people come to me and they're like, "Hey, we have this game on Steam, and we don't have any wish lists. We're not getting any engagement on Steam. No one found out about us. Why is that the case? They don't have a social media. They don't have a website. They're not sharing any updates. They're not being engaged. Stuff like that. I think that that happens. That's way too common, sadly. The second thing I would say is not being understanding that there's not one single solution to the marketing of the things that I just listed that is the solution to what you're looking for. You want to be able to build your brand presence. You want to be able to build your profile overall, but it doesn't just come from one single thing. You need to be active, continuously push forward and keep yourself engaged in the discussion in order to build that profile. Because if you, let's say, finish your game and then you're ready to launch, and then you create a social media and you have 3 posts before launch, no one's going to give a shit about you. They're not going to look at anything you said because they don't even know who you are. But you have to have a cadence of putting yourself out there, improving your SEO, getting digitally seen. And I would say that you do that by doing all these types of marketing that I'm mentioning. Work on PR. You don't have to hire an agency. Just start pitching journalists yourself and explain to them why you want your game covered and why it's a fit for them. You don't need to pay for influencer marketing. Plenty of influencers, they do stuff for free. They always help out game developers. They want to showcase the games for their own audiences because it's of interest. And then, social media, the easiest thing to do, just keep yourself engaged, post your development updates, share yourself in the discussions around Wishlist Wednesday, Screenshot Saturday, and stuff like that. The community will come with that. There's indie developers out there that have done phenomenal jobs at growing their own profiles with zero marketing budget. I was speaking to this studio, I think they were called Bullhorn Studio or something like that, a couple of months ago, and they were based out of a small town in Italy. And they told me that they've never allocated any kind of budget towards marketing. It's just 2 people. They're working on their game, but their Twitter had like 3,000 followers. All of their posts had, like anywhere between 50 to 200 likes and retweets. Great engagement. I think that they did a phenomenal job of being able to build a community with, zero marketing. And, they're still developing the game, but I know that they are looking for a publisher and investor. And, I'm pretty confident that if the game is a quality product, they have the right marketing tools and KPIs around them that they met, and the metrics look good, they'll have no problem securing that deal.
And you bring up a good point about not having to go out and hire a PR agency. If you're looking at the lowest common denominator and like the easiest, that low hanging fruit, just get somebody to help you with your social media. I mean, just doing that in and of itself, whether it's through an intern or a service or somebody that you bring on, that can be a huge help. But when you're talking about going and doing a lot of pitching journalists on your own, the hardest thing for indies to find is like, where do you find those? Where is there like a list of journalists somewhere? It's like, how do you even go about building that type of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say start at Google. Google's like, we use Google every single day. It's the basis of our job. You go in, you research, who your competitors are, and seeing the coverage that they're getting. So if you have an indie game that's inspired by Chrono Trigger, old school Final Fantasy, Google that, see who's covering it. There's plenty of writers at Kotaku, at Polygon, everywhere that cover these kinds of things, and they're enthusiasts that you should send your game to. But don't just focus on the big sites. I think that the micro sites also do a great job of keeping their communities engaged. Their audiences are always active in reading their articles and checking it out. Indie Gamer has great coverage. There's these smaller sites as well. Niche Gamer, Bleeding Cool, all these sites, they do a phenomenal job. They may not have 30 million readers a month, but their audiences are actively engaged, and you want to be able to tap those sites. So there's the ones that are the macro level, which are great. But then there's the smaller sites that have great communities, that are the ones that are actively engaged, and they have great engagement rates. With that said, you can always Google, you can always head to Twitter and check out these writers' profiles. In their bios, a lot of the time they show what they cover and what they write about. It's all the information is available at your disposal. Now, the one thing I will say is that one major reason that a lot of developers hire an agency is for bandwidth and for existing relationships. Look, I'm not going to play the existing relationships card, because I don't think that's necessarily always the case. Yes, relationships are important, but you can build those relationships yourself. I don't want to deter anyone from trying to do that. I think it's a great way to get seen by some of these guys on the influencer and the PR side. But the research and the bandwidth are the most important part. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It does take a lot of time to research. It does take a lot of bandwidth to pull in hours on a spreadsheet and get these emails and reach out to some sites where you may not get a response. But then there are the sites that will respond to you. They're the ones that want to cover your game. Learn more about how far you've come, when you're going to launch, what's next for you, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that that's really where the value of PR lies, is, once you put in the hours, you're able to get in front of these journalists and these influencers, then the rewards come in. I think you're on mute.
There, yes, I was muted because this stupid keyboard. What is the difference in any sort of messaging itself, regardless of the platform? Are there different ways that you should pitch and pivot and promote a game when your target is specifically publishers and investors versus the way you target and approach the messaging for consumers?
Yeah, that's a good point. It should be, your overall messaging should be around the product. When you're on the consumer side, you're pitching journalists, you're targeting gamers, you're looking at influencers. I think you have to showcase why the product is so great. I think you have to, talk about the features. If someone is a lover of retro RPGs, make sure to talk about the inspirations for that. Hey, you like old school Final Fantasy? Here's a great reason why you should check out what we have on Steam. And then, always provide the keys to the game, and make sure that you have a press kit ready and all that stuff, and share with them. But you should talk about the game itself. Now, when it comes to publishers and investors and you're trying to strike a deal, there's a few ways to go about it. One is to talk about the company profile and why there's potential for you guys. Talk about the equity, the sweat equity that you put into it. This is something that I learned from someone who's an investor himself. He always said, like, hey, the numbers aren't always there for everyone, but the product may be great. And the reason for that, the reason is that developers spend so much time working on the development of the game that they don't always have the chops for marketing, or they don't have the time to do it. So even if the product is great and the anticipation and wish list and stuff like that, brand awareness may not be, That's okay. It's the sweat equity is also just as important. So if you don't have the numbers to show it, show the hard work that you put into the game and what you're willing to do for it to succeed. A lot of the times, investors and publishers look at that as well. It's all about having a great product and being able to sell it like that. So when you're talking to publishers and investors, you want to talk about the potential of what you're hoping to achieve. You want to talk about the hard work that you put into it. That once they give you the money, you're not just going to be sitting on your butt and not doing anything. You want to be able to sell yourself as well. Sell yourself as a developer. Hey, I may not have tons of experience. I put in 160 hours the last month alone into pushing out this new feature that I really think is going to be a game changer for the industry. And I've seen this work incredibly well. We had a client. They had a game called Mist Caller from Onyx Wings studio in Georgia, the country, and they got an investment from Shark Tank on Shark Tank in Georgia, and the company itself had a puzzle platformer. It was a very simple game, I think, but they really positioned themselves well. They were talking about the future of the Georgian game industry, what they're hoping to accomplish with, the development of Mistcaller and how they're trying to build a hub in Georgia and all this stuff. They sold themselves incredibly well. I think that they were very perfect in their positioning as a studio. And they did get a deal. They got an investment from Shark Tank. It helped them scale their company. It helped them build their game and all that stuff. And now, the future, they're looking to expand and keep moving forward.
So what, all right, let's say you've got your marketing plan going and you're executing on whatever it may be that you're executing on. What are the metrics that you need to be looking at that are important to understand and grow when it comes to running one of these sorts of campaigns?
Yeah, definitely. So when you're launching a specific marketing campaign, let's just take PR, for example. I think it's important to look at the success of the campaign and basically review who covered you, how much coverage you got, in who wrote about you, what the impressions and reach of their sites are. So there's plenty of free tools out there, hypestat.com, similarweb.com. They're all able to help you assess and analyze the reach of the articles that you were published in. Look at the influencers on Twitch and YouTube. You can look at the views and the subscribership, but I would try and look at the overall engagement of that YouTuber's video. So, if you see that a YouTuber has, I don't know, like 100,000 subscribers and the comments are 50 to 60, go take a look at their other videos. If their other videos have 30, 20 comments, you're kind of a bunch above the benchmark that they're traditionally seeing, which is good. Try and get more exposure that way. And then take all those numbers, be able to, amalgamate it and put it together. Put it in a nice part of your pitch deck. When it comes to the game, talk about, I was featured in IGN, Game Informer, PC Gamer, Indie Gamer, Niche Gamer. These are the total amount of media articles written about us. Here's the total reach, 45 million. Here's what they're saying, overall sentiment. Look at the positive versus negative sentiment. So read each article and be able to assess if what they're saying is positive, neutral, or negative. And then you want to include that. I think that having a 60, 70% positive sentiment rating out of 20 articles is great. I think that you could present that and using that as a marketing metric for, pitching your game to a publisher and investor. Look at what influencers are saying. What was the total reach of the influencers? Don't be afraid to pull out negativity. And this is one thing that I think is incredibly important. You want to be able to respond to criticism to your game in a fair way, but also use it as a way to improve your game. So if you see that, 15 influencers played your game and they're saying that, hey, this feature is kind of falling short some ways, or there's a few bugs here and there that need to be ironed out, go straight to the dashboard and make sure you're doing that. Be able to fix those things, because that kind of feedback is incredibly important to your game. And then you're also able to use that as a way to present it to investors and publishers. hey, we had our game reviewed by 15 influencers, and they said that this feature could be improved. So what did we do? We took it to our development tool. We were able to fix it. We went back to the drawing board and rebuilt the whole thing, or we fixed a small part of it, and we asked them their feedback on it, and they loved it. I think that shows an investor how willing you are to succeed, because you're open to the criticism and changing your product. You're open to fixing the details that need to be fixed, and all of that stuff is incredibly important.
It's funny that you mentioned the good parts of negative reviews, because just before we went live, I saw an article saying how it was good that some site has given Tears of the Kingdom a 6 out of 10, where everybody else is like hundreds across the board. It's like, it's good to be realistic on some of these things as well. And then, yeah, like you're saying, show that you're able to adapt to it and you understand and you know why they had this concern. Is there a point when publishers and investors start looking at a game that they've seen a lot of marketing and PR servers, maybe they've seen it at 2 or 3 different conferences, and it still doesn't have a publisher or an investor? Can you become a victim of having too much press without success? Or are they going to start thinking that something's wrong with the game or the studio because you still haven't landed something?
That's a good question. I think that the purpose or the reasoning behind it is probably the most important part. So you get a ton of press, a lot of influencers are covering your game, but you still don't have a publisher. What's the reason? A lot of the times publishers will ask, and you have to be prepared to, have a proper answer. So, just saying that we're not interested in a publisher or investor is not going to work, obviously. But also talking about, hey, we didn't feel ready to take this game to market. I think that's a viable approach. I don't think that there's ever a time where a publisher is going to be like, oh, they're too successful. They have such a great market share that something is suspicious right out the bat. They're going to want to know why you haven't struck a deal yet. Yes. But your reasoning has to be important. If you fumbled it completely and you have all this stuff and people are just shitting all over the game, yeah, I don't think that you're going to get a publishing or an investing deal. But if you tell them that, hey, the game just wasn't quite ready for us to be able to launch it yet, but we are ready now, and we're going to, looking for a go-to market partner, I think it's a perfectly viable reason. I don't think there's any problem with that. It's all about how ready you are. But, just be prepared to answer some of the tough questions, because I do think that will come up if you are incredibly successful and you pass on publishers and you're waiting like a year or two. And then, once your game is ready to launch, the publisher is going to be like, all right, you had 2 years, you've built out this successful marketing campaign. Why are you looking for a publisher now? And I would be honest in the approach. Just don't, be pulling their tail and, messing with them and stuff like that just because you want to hear from publishers. There has to be a really good reason for what you're doing.
It's just as I tell developers, it never hurts to ask. Just ask the question. We do see, we have these games come up in greenlight meetings that, we've seen at like 5 or 6 different conferences back to back, and they have like a good marketing, like, or they had a hugely successful Kickstarter, and it's like, well, why do they need a publisher? You never know. Maybe they just don't. Yeah, they've got development fund, fine. They just need somebody who knows how to execute on all this sort of stuff. But yeah, it's one of those things that you just, like you said, you have to be ready to answer these questions and answer them truthfully. So,
I mean, look, I've been part of these meetings where people are being hounded on both the publisher and developer side, and they're being hounded. They don't know how to answer the question because they think that their answer is going to be stupid. But you have to be prepared. I mean, you can't just walk in blindly and be like, oh, well, I never really thought about that until now. It doesn't work that way. You need to be able to be prepared to answer the hard questions.
Or they are trying to second guess and assume what answer the publisher or the investor wants to hear, and they're trying to tailor something, and that can quite frequently backfire on you as well. All right, we've got about 15 more minutes here. So if you've got questions about PR, marketing, how it's going to help you get a publisher or an investor, drop them in chat, pop them in the Discord channel as well. Dan's keeping close attention over there, and we'll get all of that answered. Now, one of the big things is discoverability on the consumer side, but discoverability still counts on the publisher, on
Yep.
the investor side. How do you make your game stand out in a crowded market? I mean, we see even indie pubs getting 3,000 some submissions a year. What can you do to make yourself stand out against everybody else?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I was just about to talk about that. Your game has to have a great concept to it. It can't be very basic, but I understand the need to be able to do that for your first project to just trying to get a feel for it and how the industry works, how the life cycle of a publishing deal works, and the go-to market strategy. But let's say that you've ironed out your game. You know what the concept is. You love it. You want everything to work well. The one thing I will tell you is that assets are critical in the way that you portray your game. Being able to make a trailer that stands out is incredibly important. Very, very important. I worked a few years back with a developer called Balancing Monkey Games when I was working at Vicarious PR. Shout out to the Michael and the team there. Balancing Monkey Games had this game called Before We Leave. It was a civilization builder. I think that there's lots of civilization builders, but they were just incredibly smart with how they developed the trailers and the assets to the game. It was like these hexagon style, ways to build. They built everything using that style from the ground up. They understood their brand incredibly well, and they understood their audience. They executed it perfectly. So they had their trailer, which got them some traction. If anyone's interested in checking out the announcement trailer for Before We Leave, go ahead and run to YouTube and look at that very first reveal. I think it was like 2019 or 2018 or something like that. So they did a great job with their assets and working on that trailer. They eventually got noticed by Epic, and Epic gave them, they launched on the Epic Store with an exclusivity deal, which worked in their favor. I mean, I think that the game did incredibly well in terms of launch and sales and all that. But when it came time to take the game to Steam, they actually got a publishing deal with, I think it was Team 17. And Team 17 handled the game for them for Steam. We helped with some influencer stuff. But it was, I mean, talk about just knowing your audience, knowing your niche. They didn't try to appeal to everyone. They knew who they wanted to target. They developed a very, very wonderful trailer, very great key art and screenshots that got noticed by media. We got them reviews into almost every publication. The game did incredibly well. I think like 7 and 8s across the board. Sales wise, it took off. But it was really, I mean, this is a team from New Zealand. I think they were like 3 or 4 people when they first made that announcement trailer. They knew how to develop a very good trailer, and they used that to their advantage. And then eventually it got them an Epic deal, got them a publishing deal with Team 17. And, the rest was history. I think they're working on their next game that they just recently announced.
So just had a question come in from YouTube. I work at an indie game development company. We are not currently working on our marketing and social media. In your opinion, can we get a good contract with a publisher anyway?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think that, it works against you. It only helps you. So we've seen a lot of cases where, I mean, the product is incredibly well built and, publishers love the game. They want to be a part of it and be able to work on it from start to finish. So being able to announce it, handle the social, work on the PR and influencer marketing campaign, and then of course launch it and take it to market. So I don't think that you necessarily need all of this stuff to start, but it definitely gets you a head start. You want to be able to be put on the map. You want publishers to want to work with you and to actively seek you out. And that's the major benefits of working with or just doing marketing for yourself. Whether you hire an agency, someone in-house, it ultimately just helps your case and why a publisher and investor should work with you and invest in your project. But to answer your question, no, it's not absolutely necessary. If your product is fantastic, it'll find its way to a publisher eventually.
And it's also good. I mean, just aside from the publisher interest level, it's also good to get that exposure, so you also start getting feedback. It's like we just had a situation where, the publisher was talking about how difficult the game was, even in its current stage, and it was obvious that the developer was fine tuning the difficulty to them, not necessarily the audience. And so, if you're consistently working in a vacuum and you don't have feedback coming from the consumers on one side, but also from publishers and investors on the other side, because those publishers will give you feedback occasionally.
Yep.
You run the risk of just basically not seeing the forest for the trees and focusing on what your team finds difficult, which is going to be way different than what the consumers or the publishers find difficult.
Yeah, and we do marketing for this company called GXC. They're a global investment company, but they have a few brands, and one of them is called Global Top Round. They also have Game Round, which is a user feedback platform for games that haven't launched yet. I think a really good example of this is a game called Stray Blade, which recently launched. They basically took their game to it was a Souls-like game. So, they took it to GTR. They got a lot of feedback. They took it to Game Round, and a lot of players played it. They gave some crucial feedback, and they saw what they needed to change with the fighting mechanics, the overall game design. They heard from the players directly what they needed to fix, and what they saw and what they liked and didn't like. And then they turned it around. They redesigned some stuff to their game, and they eventually secured a publishing deal with 505 Games. And that was like a perfect example of exposing your game early, marketing it, getting feedback, listening to the feedback, and then taking that and taking it to market with a publisher who was really impressed with the results that they made. And I know 505 really liked the concept of the game. It just launched a couple weeks ago, and it's out there now. But it was like, I don't know, probably like a 2 or a couple year journey of seeing what people had to say about it, doing a lot of demo and A/B testing, and getting feedback from exposing it to the market early.
So, is there a way to spin the PR, the marketing around getting that dreaded mixed review segment on Steam?
Yeah, it's it's something that developers see time and time again. Look, I will say this about reviews. I used to do PR for a company called Trustpilot. They were an online reviews platform. The one thing about reviews in general are that people will look at a rating and they will assess their game upon that first glance, and it's struggle for people to be able to overcome that if your game has mixed reviews. But if you respond to a negative or a mixed review, and you respond directly, whether it be reaching out to that person that wrote the review, responding with improvements to your game. There was like this report that Trustpilot had put out that said something like 30 to 40% of people will be willing to give you a second chance if you respond to their negative review. So I don't think a lot of people realize just how important it is for gamers to be heard. If someone doesn't like your game and they leave you a negative review, it's very important to reach out to them and trying to implement the changes that they want, but also try to understand with them and ask them to take another look at the game. So let's say that your game has launched and there was like a feature people didn't like, or it was buggy. Be quick to fix that and go back to them and ask them to give you a second chance. 30 to 40% of the time, they're going to give you a second chance. And I think people need to realize that developers need to understand that once your community is heard, they're going to be more in your corner than you think. And you can definitely leverage that to getting past that mixed review hurdle from Steam.
All right, so this one's along the similar lines, but it's a long one, so bear with me here. Arthur on YouTube says, I'm concerned about putting my new development to the public since the publisher usually wants to control the launch narrative. It just seems like a catch-22. If I publicly expose the game, then a publisher doesn't want to deal with the marketing because it's already viewable by the public. So what's the answer to that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's kind of two paths you can take here, Arthur. I would say that if you want to be able to market your game and take it to launch the way that you want to, you shouldn't let a publisher interfere with that. If you're okay with them controlling the narrative, and I have seen it, you are right in some cases. I have seen a publisher wanting to be able to take control of the marketing, the PR, and the way that it's spun from front to end. Uh, by all means, don't announce your game early. But at the end of the day, the quality of the product is really what stands out. So if your game is fantastic, the marketing comes with it, and the success will ride along with it too. I don't think you have to necessarily be worried about the narrative, because at the end of the day, they're just looking at the product. I mean, a narrative is a fantastic story. Don't get me wrong; it's a great way to drum up some interest and all that stuff. But it's not going to really impact your reviews and all that stuff in the way that you think it will. Influencers are still going to play your game. Media is still going to review your game, and the narrative may get you a couple of people here and there, but it could also work against you. I mean, there's not really a right or wrong answer to it. It's more just about how you want to take your game to market. Do you want to be able to be the one to control the marketing and the narrative around it, or are you okay with someone else taking the reins there and doing it for you? And if the second option is there, that's fine. I mean, a lot of developers, they just want to focus on developing and have someone else market their game. Then that's the option for you. But I have seen from my own experience, publishers and investors do come flocking when a game is doing incredibly successful in building their own brand and building brand awareness.
All right, so here's your big chance to plug and promote everything that's going on. So we've only got a few more minutes. Tell us what you've got going on, what's new, how people can reach out to you, contact you, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, at Looper, we're working on a ton of projects. We focus primarily on indie games. I myself have launched over 200 marketing campaigns for games, with the biggest of the big, from Nexon to Microsoft to the smallest indie developers, one-man teams. I've seen it all. I mean, 200 campaigns across the board over my career. I think that we understand how tough it is to be a developer in today's landscape, and we're able to help market your game and market your strengths in ways that you might not see. I feel for the developers. We understand them at every single level. And you don't have to hire us. It's not a big deal. Like, I'm always down to just chat and give you some advice where you need to. You can head over to our website, looper.gg, or email me, wahid@looper.gg. But I'm always looking to network, to expand my network there and connect with developers, see what you guys are working on. And then if you're in need of marketing, I mean, I think that we are some of the best in the business. We have a very capable team. I myself have been working in this industry for 10 years. Always down to connect and work on some new projects. So, hit me up.
All right, we've got one more from Lee on YouTube, and it's a good one, so I want to make sure we hit this before we go. What do you think of a developer offering to play with a potential publisher or investor directly during their game review process, allowing the dev to address questions and provide real-time feedback?
Yeah, hey Lee. I think it's critical. If a publisher or investor wants to be part of the game review process, I mean, they have insights that they're able to provide to you that others may not have. I think I can't remember exactly who the publisher was. A couple years back, I was working with a developer out in Asia, and they had wanted to bring their game to the West. So the publisher that they had secured a deal with had recommended that they wanted to work out the game review process for them and get direct feedback from gamers. They played it out. They were able to make the changes to their game because there's a lot of transition coming from east to west in terms of Asia to North America markets. They were able to launch their game, and I think that they did an incredibly good job. And that was all thanks to the publisher that had invested and the QA and the playtesting behind it. They were able to basically review the game properly. They were able to take it to media for reviews and get great coverage for them. And the game, I think did particularly well in sell.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate all the insight.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
Dan,
Yes, I'm right here. Indy's right.
Welcome
Indy's
back,
in
man.
the house. What's up? Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This is a good one for sure. Thank you, Tripwire Presents, right here. This right here for sponsoring us. It's amazing. Make sure and join the Discord if you have not already. Discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. And this will be a podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms. So just look up Indie Game Business. And if you're curious about our next event, which is in September, go to indiegame.business.
Highly recommend you attend, guys. Indie game business is crucial to the industry.
Yes. And Jay has some special passes for people.
Yeah, always. Our tickets are only like $50 for the meet to match section. You can watch and participate in all the sessions 100% free. But if $50 is a lot of money wherever you are, that's perfectly fine. Just DM us, send me an email, whatever. I'll hook you up and give you a pass. So awesome. All right. Well, to everyone, enjoy Tears of the Kingdom Day. And then
Jay's done. He's gonna go. He's got it all queued up.
No, I'm not.
Jay's been waiting to go play.
Have it up there and waiting for my son to come home. I'm not going to jump on it before he does. It's all him. I got work to do anyway.
You're
So I'm being the good dad today and not going and playing it before he gets home. But yeah, Wade, thank you so much. And
thanks, guys.
People can find you on Looper. It's looper.com, right?
Looper.gg.
Looper.gg.
Yep.
And yeah, everybody else, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.